and welcome to Penn State Sports Night for the week of November 3rd. I'm Madi Shutt, here with Chris Gamble, Meghan Caffrey, and Nicole Barros. Guys, let's start talking about Penn State football. What were your thoughts on this past weekend's loss to Maryland?
Well, I definitely think that Sam Ficken was just the hero of the game. He accounted for 12 of the 19 points that the team had, and I think he got Big Ten Player of the Week, too. So he definitely really carried the team. He was the reason why we had the lead going into halftime. So I'd say Sam Ficken really, really did a good job in that game.
Yeah, this is actually his fourth Big Ten special teams that he has been on for a Big Ten player. So I think I agree that he just outstanding, and especially coming off, beginning of his time year ago, 2 years ago, wasn't doing too hot, and he's really stepped up his game.
I think that Sam Ficken right now is proving to be the model of consistency. All season he's only had 2 field goal attempts which have been blocked. So he has come such a far way if you look at his growth from freshman year to now this season. He is consistent now.
I believe that Ficken did a great job by just making field goals, because without him, it might have been a blowout here in Penn State against a Maryland team that we were expected to beat.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of that game, in case you guys missed it, there was a little fight that occurred in the beginning, and when both captains for both teams came out in the middle of the field, Maryland actually refused to shake the hands of our Penn State players. What do you guys think that speaks of Maryland? To me, I think it's really unsportsmanlike, in that, it speaks more than just that team. It's speaking for the university. What were your thoughts on that situation?
I just think that was very disrespectful, obviously. I know Franklin said in his press conference that in 20 years of coaching, he had never seen anything like that. I know the athletic director talked about how it didn't reflect, the university or any of the student athletes, but I just thought it was very immature, and I know at the end their coach, I think, said, let the rivalry begin or something like that. And in response to that, I'd say, I think we beat them 33 times in history, so when they get to that level, then maybe the rivalry can begin, but...
Yeah, I think it just brings up a question of where did that come from? Why was that even thought of to happen in the first place? It's just that starts off the tone of the whole entire football game on a negative pace. And, you don't want to do that, especially when you're coming into another team's home field. It does show disrespect. And, as being a new team, as Maryland is in the Big Ten, I think it wasn't a smart decision.
I think it may not have been smart or correct by sports standards, but I feel as though everybody's not buddy-buddy, everybody's not friends, and they do want to beat Penn State, because despite what Penn State is going through this year, the up and down season, they're still Penn State. You want to beat Penn State when you play them, no matter where you play them at. So they made a statement. We're here to win. We're here to play hard and tough, and we don't want to be your friend. So honestly, I liked it. Maybe that's the wrong response, but I liked it because it shows that they have toughness, macho-ness. Everybody wants to be friends, and it's football. Yeah.
Speaking of toughness, Christian Hackenberg obviously came in, is supposed to be this great quarterback, supposed to, bring Penn State to a new level of play. He was 43% of his passes were completed, and he has now thrown an interception in every game but one. What do you think is going to be occurring in these next upcoming games? Where do you think Franklin goes with this? Franklin even keeps saying, we'll fix it, we'll fix it. What do you do if you're him in the situation with your quarterback who's not doing what he's supposed to be doing?
Well, we've already had depth issues the whole season, and now losing our left tackle, Donovan Smith, is just magnifying that, I think. So I don't want to put all the blame on Christian, but I don't want to put it on the offense either, because we did lose, that depth. So I think that's something. Hopefully Miles Diffenbach, he was supposed to come back, I think, for this game and play a little bit with his injury. So hopefully he'll be back, maybe to spark some offensive, plays a little bit more than what we've been doing. So
it is a good point, Nicole. It's not all Christian's fault. It's just a matter of communication. You have to know what your offensive line is doing, and the offensive line needs to know what one another is doing. They were tackling one another in a couple of the past games. So it's just communication is key at this point to give Hackenberg the confidence that he needs in the pocket to know that he's got, the couple of seconds back there to look around, find his receivers, and know that his line is keeping him safe.
That being said, though, I think the running game has been really off. Zwinnett got hurt. Obviously, he's out for the season. And, this game they had 1 yard per carry was their average, and that isn't what we know at Penn State football. So kind of that being said, I don't think that it is just on Christian at all, but it's a whole offensive line. Everyone needs to get in this mentality that everyone needs to step up their game.
Going off what you said, Maddie, I think it's the tell of what a difference a week makes. Last week versus Ohio State, he was 31 for 49 for 224 yards. This week, he was 18 to 42 for 177. Like you said, the running game was only averaging a yard per game versus Maryland this week. Last week, it was a half yard per game. So these guys just aren't getting it done. They aren't running the ball. They aren't giving him enough time to be Christian Hackenberg that everybody expects him to be. But at the same time, he does have to take some blame because he stands back there. He has good legs. We saw in one play he lowered his shoulder and got the first down. I feel like he needs to do that more often, especially since when you hike the ball, that line isn't changing. So you got to make plays on your own.
Yeah, and kind of going off what you said about the running game, with Zwenak being out, I think that Franklin's going to start to use Lynch a lot more. I think that kind of Zwenak was that powerful person. Bill Belton is the fast one, but I think Lynch is a combination of both of them. So I'm excited to see what he can do for the season. I mean, he was 21 yards on 51 carries, so I think he did a good job in this game.
I think Bill Belton hasn't been what we've all expected. I think, he wasn't even the starter. Zwenak was starting. He was the second, and Lynch is actually the third line. And I think that Lynch is playing so much better than Belton right now, and that he should be starting. And I'm kind of disappointed in Belton. And, great season last year. Everyone expected really high things, and he just hasn't been giving us that. So.
I feel another thing that the Penn State offense needs to do is get 6'6" tight end Jesse James involved because he's a security blanket. When you drop back the pass, you have a 6'6" target. That's pretty easy. I don't care who's in your face. You can hit a 6'6" target. And this week he scored his first touchdown since week 2. So they're not using him. And tight ends can save quarterbacks' careers, as we've seen.
Now let's go to a package from Sam Mancuso, who was at the Maryland-Penn State football game this past Saturday.
Coming into the game riding a 3-game losing streak, the Penn State Nittany Lions look to right the ship against new conference rival Maryland. This is the first time that Penn State has played Maryland since Maryland has entered the Big Ten.
As it's been doing all year, the Nittany Lion defense was very tough. The Maryland rushing attack only managed 33 yards on 31 carries. Sam Ficken drilled a 48-yard field goal to give Penn State the 9-7 lead. Bob Shutt's defense did everything in their power to stay in the game. This is one of 6 sacks from the Penn State defense. But Maryland moved the ball well in the fourth quarter. A Brad Craddock field goal gave the Terrapins the lead at 20-19. And that's the final score. Penn State dropped to 4-4 on the season.
On the heels of yet another disappointing loss, the Nittany Lions look to right the ship against Indiana next weekend. From Beaver Stadium for PSSN, I'm Brandan May.
So guys, now let's move on to Penn State men's soccer. They started out this season really well, 6th ranked, up there, but in fact they have lost 4 of the 5 last games. With that being said, they lost this past weekend in double overtime 2-1. What do we feel about this team, where they're going, what to expect?
I think the momentum was really in favor of Northwestern in the beginning of that game. And I don't think it was until the penalty kick, which was the first one that Penn State has had this season, that it kind of shifted back to Penn State. And they really fought hard coming back into the second half. They outshot them, I think, 5-4 in the second half. So it definitely showed their resilience, but they just couldn't pull out a win, unfortunately.
Going off what you said, Megan, the fact that Penn State had the chance to clinch the regular season Big Ten title with all the struggles they've had this season, it's kind of heartbreaking. I feel as though it's going to be tough for them to get up against their next game against Akron, who's a pretty good team. They play better at home than on the road, but they're a formidable opponent and could potentially spoil Penn State's season.
Another player that's been a shocker to me has been Andrew Wolverton. He now holds the record for the most shutouts in a career here at Penn State. And he has not had a shutout since October 4th. And that's a month ago. And that game was against Rutgers. So I think that, what's happened with him? Did he get to this goal and he reached it and was just throw in the towel? I don't know if it's miscommunication between the team, but to me, you set this record and you're on a high, and he's been scored on every game for the past month. Kind of what do you guys think is going through his head? is it necessarily his defense? I don't know. But to me, I just think that that's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, I wonder, I would feel very frustrated if I was him, coming off, like, having all these shutouts in the beginning of the season, the whole team was playing great, and then to come to this where he's not doing any shutouts or anything like that. So maybe it did go to his head a little bit, having it in the beginning, all the shutouts in the beginning, but I think the rest of the team really played with great cohesion, great organization, and I know the other goalie had 8 saves, I think, so he definitely was part of the reason why the other team was able to do so well. So,
going off of your point a little bit, the beginning of October was really the start of what could have been a hot month, but it then fell a little bit. They went into a little bit of a slump, but Mikey Minutolo came off this Sunday, and he hadn't scored a goal since October 1st when the team was looking hot. But then he came in, he sat the bench for the beginning, and he came in and gave the team the spark that they needed and was able to tie it up. So it's all about the little slumps that they're going through, but the team did play really well. They went into double overtime. So it does say a lot about them.
Back to Andrew, I mean, he might have set the record. I don't think he necessarily got big-headed, but it could have been possibly Penn State knows that they have him waiting back there, so they don't have to play as hard as defense as they would normally before he was the record setter for Penn State. And when you have that and you constantly getting shots on the goal, that's not good. And he's human. So the fact that he's getting scored on, I don't think it's acceptable, but I think you have to give him a little bit of a pass.
So let's move on to women's ice hockey. This past weekend they lost and tied to Syracuse. Obviously not something that they're proud of, a loss, but I think 2 people that have really stepped up for this team are both goalkeepers, Arestman and Eckerstorm. Both of them have had amazing games this season with tons of saves. This past weekend, Arestman had 50 saves in Sunday's game, and Eckerstorm had 32 in Saturday's game. That being said, it speaks a lot to me that, if you can rely that heavily on 2 different goalkeepers, one being a freshman and the other being a junior, that's really something to look forward to coming in to Big Ten play and the rest of your season. Do you guys have thoughts on goalies, anything from this past weekend's loss and tie?
I think the special teams really powered Penn State. They've been playing really well on the road. I think all the goals that they had were scored on power play, so that just kind of shows, how strong the special teams is and how well they've been doing in those 2 games especially.
It's definitely on that both sides of special teams, the power play and the penalty kill. Those girls, the defense was able to hold off when they were down a man. So it's really going off that. And, the goalies keeping out as many goals as the shots that they've had on goal. It's a young team, as everyone has talked about before, but they're proving to be coachable, and that's what it is. They're learning from their mistakes that they've made, and having a strong power play and penalty kill, that makes you dominant, and that makes people are scared then to, get a penalty and go up against you.
Another team that really stood out in ice hockey is the Penn State men's team. They beat Bentley this past weekend in both games 3-2. Matthew Scoff, back in the goal, had 57 saves on the weekend. He's been outstanding. And 5 different Nittany Lions scored. So kind of where are we at with that? Where do they go for their upcoming games? They're going to play UMass, Michigan, and Cornell, which are all going to be really tough, big teams for them to play. What do you guys see happening in those games? Any predictions?
The men's ice hockey team, I think, is the perfect example at this point of getting a year under your belt of being in the league that you're in and getting a taste of the competition that you're being put up against. And last season, they went through the season, and they did have some big wins, but now they've started off this season strong. And I think that that's going to give them the confidence that they need to go into now the bigger powerhouses that they're going to be facing that are on the schedule.
When you're facing powerhouses like Cornell and Michigan, you need confidence to go out there and just be yourself and play how you practice and to be a good team. So the fact that they're getting these big wins and a lot of saves and everybody's scoring goals is great for the team.
We'll be right back with Penn State Sports Night.